We're recording. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. This is going to be our last Wellbeing Monday session of the academic year. And it's very special because we're merging the May theme that was creativity with the June theme that is purpose. And for this session, we have a very special professor, Baruch Corazon. He's a professor of the I School of Architecture and Design, and he was one of the people who helped design and launch the Bachelor in Fashion Design. We're very happy to have him here. And thank you, Baruch. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for being here in this practically summer afternoon. Well, I will first resume this session. It will answer mainly three questions. What is creativity? How does it work? And why is it needed? What, how, and why? And I would like this session also to be as interactive as could be, because creativity is about creating a collective creativity. First of all, I will just do a brief introduction of who am I and why I am teaching creativity. During my life, I have always been involved in a variety of activities that include, first it was writing when I was a teenager. Then I became very interested in fashion, and there I worked for companies like Del Pozo, Missoni, Hermes, Loewe. And I am also an artist, so I also paint and I have an artistic activity. And I like to write and to think. My studies are both in fashion and law and economics, but I am very interested in psychology, philosophy. People say, but what are you really? Why are you so polyphacetic? And I have to say that from a perspective, all of these activities are different branches of the same tree. And the root that explains all these different expressions is precisely creativity. And I would like to think about this premise. Creativity is your operative system. Creativity is the way we create our lives and the way we live our lives. First of all, I would like you to answer this question. Are you creative? Yes, 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 yes. I believe no. This is very common, sort of. I think so. Yes, yes. Okay. Yes could be more. Okay. Yes. In fact, usually when people is asked this question, they tend to say no. And a very common thing, it is, well, for example, as an artist, when I paint, well, how lucky you are, I don't know how to draw. And this is something that it is not real. This is why I am showing you this slide of this amazing book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards. It has, well, more than 20 years. And Andrew say, of course, as I am human, that's the key question. That's the key thing. Yeah, exactly. All of us are equally capable of drawing, for example. And in this amazing book, they show you how you can draw without using your left side of the brain, your left hemisphere. I guess most of you are familiar with this. It is not a theory, it is a scientific fact that we have two hemispheres, the left and the right. And the left one, it is the one that rules all our analytical and thinking activity. And the right hemisphere of the of the brain controls the left part of our body. This is why we are usually right-handed, except for the left-handed, of course. But in the left-handed, this relation is inverted. The thing is that in this book, they explain different techniques of drawing without noticing that you are drawing. And it is amazing because when you use your natural ability and it is not intermediated by your thoughts, by your mind, then it becomes the real you. It becomes the you that has all these potentials and all these gifts we are given by nature. What is creativity? Okay, let's answer to the first question. And let's think about the title of this session. Creativity is your superpower. Well, is it a superpower really? Well, it is indeed. It is us. It is our operative system. Creativity, it is the innate capacity that we have to operate creatively. Think about this in terms of humanity. Andrew said, of course, as I am human. So think in terms of humanity, you know, how humanity created tools. Let's think about, tools like weapons, axes and archers, tools as baskets, tools as the wheel, tools as the sail, as boats, as automobiles, as planes. All these are invention of humans, and they are the product of the creative capacity of humans. In fact, paleoanthropologists and neuroanthropologists explain how the first humans descended from the trees because of this big explosion in the center of Africa. This is why the oldest humans have been found in the Rift Depression in Africa. They had to shift from a fruit-based diet that they got from the trees to more energy-rich foods like seeds, roots, and tubers. This was a key step that full brain growth. Later, the invention of fire marked a turning point. By cooking food, humans made it easier to digest and extract nutrients. So it was all a creative way of saving energy from eating and digesting. And this energy could be used by the brain. And it allowed us to develop all these tools, but think also about the actions, creative actions, like ride a horse, for example, or build a house, or paint. Think about the first paintings in the caves, no? And creativity is also what explains how our brain developed concepts. So ideas, language, in fact, it is the most creative activity of humans, and narratives, as Harari explains in Sapiens, this book that most of you, I'm sure you know. The true superpower of Homo sapiens was not strength or speed, but the ability to create and believe in shared stories. It allowed humans to hunt in large groups, to build tribes and nations. All these are concepts, ideas. Narratives gave us the power to imagine things that don't yet exist and act as if they do. And as we will see later, money, for example, is something that it doesn't exist. It's just a concept, but we act as if it were a real thing. That's in fact what allowed small bands of humans to become the dominant species on Earth. Is creativity your superpower? Of course. How to use it for greater well-being and purpose? It is the second part of the title. Let's think, why is purpose relevant to creativity? Purpose is in fact the power of intention. We are creative when we are moved to be creative, when we are moved to get out of a certain situation and create a new one, when we are moved to improve something. Intention is what moves us. It is the motivation. Purpose is the motivation. And in fact, think about how motivation has the same root as motion. So motion is what moves us, and motivation moves us. How? Through emotions. It is very interesting. I remember I wrote an article at the beginning of the century about the retro design that we were started to observe. Think about all these cars that are retro cars, like the Mini, like the Cinquecento, like actually the Renault 5. This is why I created this idea that we should not talk anymore about automotion, but about emotion. By automotion, we drive, but by emotion, we desire to drive. And I guess this is what interested me of fashion in the beginning, because in fact, when we talk about fashion, we are talking about creating desire, also the desire of our social identity. What is moving us and why purpose is directly linked to creativity. I have recently heard like this talk by Roger Bregman. He's a Dutch man that has written a very interesting book. And this book is named More Ambition. And in fact, he has created the School of Moral Ambition. You can check it online. And what moved him to create this School of Moral Ambition, it is the statistics that he read. And they explain how by the late 60s in the last century, when university students were asked in the United States, 60% say that they were moved by improving and creating a better world, better conditions, and 40% said that they were inspired, they were moved by becoming richer. And nowadays, this proportion, it is inverted. So he realized that, in fact, things that we think that are reality are merely cultural. I mean, I respect money very much, and I understand money also as a proof of what you're giving to society is being rewarded. In other words, as a proof of coherence and connections between you and the society. But in that sense, money is just a symbol, a sign of social valoration, a sign of success. But we have to keep in mind that a symbol is a representation. So it is like this saying, like when we look at the moon and we point to the moon, you look at the moon and your finger will rise. But not by raising your finger, you will see the moon. In fact, raise your finger without purpose and you will miss the moon. And focus on what you're meant to do and success will follow. So the more powerful the purpose is, the more powerful the creativity will be. It is a booster. Imagine, for example, the motivation to create fire, or the motivation to paint in a cavern. Paleoanthropologists try to explain the origin of art, what moved them to paint that, and they said, well, it's maybe they wanted, it was like a magical, a ritual, maybe. But as a creative, I have to say that I can understand perfectly that when you desire something so much and you paint it, you get an enormous satisfaction. So I guess that when they were painting all these animals in the caves, they were just having the same satisfaction as when they were hunting the animal. Let's go back to this idea and how humans' creativity has evolved. So I'm going to share this piece of 2001 from Stanley Kubrick. It's amazing because this film was filmed in 1968. And I have to say that in this scene, these monkeys found that by using a bone as a weapon, they can harm the others. They have just killed an enemy. And see how beautifully and metaphorically Stanley Kubrick understood that. It is the same act to invent that tool and what is coming later. This is very nicely explained in all senses, not only from how we started with a bone as a tool, and now we are creating spaceships. But also to the music. It was sounding the Blue Danube. The music is one of the most creative expressions, of course, as we all know. Now, let's think about what do you see in this image? Well, in this image, it's obvious, yes, Manuela, two women, two faces. A lot of you already knew that. A base and two faces. The important thing is not that you discovered that, because most of us already knew. What I wanted to explain with that is how creativity helps us to understand the world, the reality in a different way. In fact, I want to insist about how, thanks to creativity, we conceptualize, we imagine, we communicate. And it is, in fact, our operative system, an operative system that is keep us alive, updated. It is something that we bring by default. Let's move now to definitions. Definitions of creativity. Guilford said, creativity is the ability to produce new and original ideas, solutions, or artistic expressions. Teresa Amabile, creativity is the production of novel and useful ideas in any domain. Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, creativity is any act, idea, or product that changes an existing domain or that transforms an existing domain into a new one. Howard Gardner, creativity is the ability to solve problems or to fashion products in a domain in a way that it is initially novel but ultimately acceptable in a culture. Edward de Bono, creativity involves breaking out of established patterns in order to look at things in a different way. And one of my favorites, Albert Einstein, creativity is seeing what everyone else has seen and thinking what no one else has thought. And this is what I wanted also to share with the example of the puzzle and the two faces. A very interesting reflection from Ted Falconer, who says, throughout my adult life, creativity has been my greatest joy. Everything is transformed by creativity. It is the basis of all human progress. It is vital in strategy, just as it is in solving problems and inventing. Without creativity, we only exist, but creativity enhances our lives. It is like a magic wand that the creative person has only to wave, and it will transform anything into beauty. Without it, everything is dull and barren. But as soon as creativity is used, the mind gains feelings that are harbingers of ideas and invention. Accompanying these feelings is excitement and pleasure, indeed pleasure, as well as the sense of the beautiful called hedonic response or creative rapture, is always associated with creativity. There are a lot of things that are in this reflection. First, he talks about joy, then about transformation, human progress, strategy, solving problems, inventing, existence, and enhancing our lives, magic, beauty, and what he calls hedonic response or creative rapture. A creative rapture, it is like an ecstasy. And I like to compare like the creative ecstasy, the eureka moment, with transcendental experiences also, because it is when we have the feeling that we are connected to the universe, to the others. Here we see some proposals. Our capacity to solve problems or look for new different solutions or approaches from Patricia. Different way to look and perceive reality, totally. Adriana, is to know how to solve problems in different ways, adapt and work with the resources you have, to see things with humor and keep on going. I love that one also, because you're talking about these concepts. Solving problems, adapting, working with the resources, with limited resources to achieve things that you wouldn't imagine. And humor is very important. Humor, joy, we will see it later also, because it's only in a joyful way that we can liberate our left hemisphere and connect more with the right one. And this is where creativity, I believe, it is mainly place, using our imagination to see a new ways. It's Madeline, totally. And a very simple one. Creativity is the ability to create. The very act of creating language is an exercise of creativity. And understanding reality through language is a creative act as well. It is as creating a map. We will see now in the next part the how. And understanding how it works, we will understand that thanks to creativity, we are capable of creating maps of reality, maps of situation. In fact, words are maps of reality if you think about it. Now, we can move to how. How does creativity work? Creativity is in nature. Nature is creative. I think it is one of the most magnificent examples of creativity. And what is the purpose? Because we are saying that creativity is very related to purpose. What is the purpose of nature? Of course, life. This is a very simple way to define how creativity works, but I think it works very well. Think about an egg. An egg, what is it, an egg? We see just a yolk and a white. This is the process of the chicken embryo development. Inside the egg, several key elements come together to make life possible. We have proteins, we have fats, we have water, we have vitamins and minerals, we have calcium carbonate, which is the shell, and of course we have DNA stored in the germinal disk of the yolk. It holds the blueprint for life. As incubation begins, these components interact and organize themselves through a complex dynamic process. Cells multiply, differentiate, and create organs, bones, feathers, till what was once just raw material becomes a fully formed chick. It's one of nature's most elegant and creative processes. We see the egg and the yolk and what is happening during the incubation, that then we see a chicken coming out of there. It's magic, it's miraculous. The perfect metaphor of how ideas are born. And it is exactly the same process that follows our creative activity. We have the egg, and the egg is just something that is containing a lot of information. And what is conforming the egg? It is the purpose, because the purpose is it is the director of our creativity. Purpose determines the path we follow. All the information we receive becomes part of the ignition of the creative process. And this is the first part of the creative process, which is what we can identify as the research phase. This is why it is so important before we start working with anything to obtain the best and most possible information about it. Because you see, the chicken will be depending on the ingredients that there were already there. In this moment, when we are starting the process, we are just looking for, we are researching, we are investigating. This is why I would recommend you to try to take always like a notebook or a sketchbook, or to practice journaling, because this is where a lot of ideas will be reflected there. Even if you don't read them later, they will be working unconsciously in your mind. And then during the incubation, this is a very struggling process, and most of you will recognize. During the incubation of an idea, we often feel confused or restless. We see during the pregnancy, it is what women call morning sickness. They feel uncomfortable, restless. There is something strange. Same happens before a big storm, when we have like this low pressure, very dense air, and then the storm explodes. And it is the same during this incubation, because it is an unconscious process. And we don't know what is happening, and this is discomforting. The third phase, an idea rises, and then it comes the eureka moment. It's like Archimedes in the bath. Eureka! Something that you didn't imagine before, that you couldn't believe, now comes to your mind. You realize. But the eureka doesn't arrive just out of nothing. It arrives out of a very struggling process and after a very deep investigation. The idea breaks out of the egg and we feel a deep, joyful sense of satisfaction. This is why in the definitions of creativity, I was insisting in this idea of joy. It is the joy when we create an idea, when we create something, and it is also the joy of letting our mind work unconsciously and getting rid of all this mental control that we are so used to. The creative method, I resume it in the 3 A's. I call it the 3 A's of creativity, which are aware, which is just observe, get information, then awake, and in awakening. But first you have to be aware, and then you can awaken. And when you awake, you let the idea emerge. First you have like a real understanding of the reality. You create the map of the reality, and then you can awake and see not just the vessel, but the two faces. And the third part of it is activate. Once you have created, once the idea has come out, it is just be in action. By becoming aware, we become aware of the map, of the game board where we are playing. Remember, creativity is our operating system. Every operating system is a game board, in fact. It's a game board on which we play. And of course, every operating system has its errors. Let's move on. Patricia, creativity requires a state of mind. Yes, of course. Of course, and we will see, we will practice it later. Because to be creative, you have to be free. Otherwise, you are just following patterns, rules, orders. But we'll see later. We're talking about the 3 phases, the 3 A's. Aware, it is the moment of downloading all the information, all the data, doing all the research. When I was studying fashion in St. Martin's, I did MA, and most of the time I spent not at school, but in museums and galleries, art galleries, and in the street, of course. And this is why the ancient Greeks, the peripatetics, like Aristotle, the lessons were just by walking, because by being in contact with the cultural activity, with the nature, with the city, with what is happening, we are downloading a lot of information, even if we are not aware of it yet. And then the second part is resetting. It is just to awake, and to awake. This is why I draw like in a meditation posture, in a Buddhist meditation posture, because just think about Archimedes. When did he have? I mean, this is maybe a myth, but in the myth, Archimedes had the awakening, had the eureka when he was taking a bath, not when he was trying to solve a problem, but when he was just enjoying taking a bath in a free moment of his time. This is the awakening moment, and then to update, activate. This is the updating. If we are thinking about creativity as an operative system has to reset, which is the awakening part of it, and has to update to the next operative system. And this is where I call the activation. And you see in this drawing, it is a very childish drawing, but creativity is very simple, and I love simplicity. We see like the sun that is illuminating all this process. And in fact, the sun is illuminating each one of these parts of the process. And the sun, it is, of course, the purpose. The purpose is directing the whole process. We talk a lot about game changers, and they have a big influence in humanity. Of course, Gandhi, Steve Jobs, Nelson Mandela, we recognize them as game changers. In the definitions of creativity, we're talking about differential elements like a change in something pre-existing that has been transformed. So all creations are a change. And of course, like any change, it generates resistances and fears. And this is what we have seen in the case of Gandhi, in the case of Nelson Mandela. And I mean, we can also experience this inside of ourselves, because we need to be really honest when we go through this creative process. And history, in fact, is a succession of transformative changes, one expression of creativity applied to different areas. So the creative mind is a mind that changes not only the rules, but the game board. And this is why these people is relevant, because Gandhi didn't change the rules of the government in India. He created the whole game board of what India was. Same with Nelson Mandela, and same with Steve Jobs in his field, of course. So if we're talking about game changers, and this is like a poetic license that I take because I am not a mathematician, but think about game theory, okay? So how does game change operate in game theory? And this takes us to this amazing fellow, John Nash. He was a Nobel Prize, and he was the author precisely of game theory. I don't know if you have seen the movie or you have read the book, A Beautiful Mind. So yes, Patricia, great movie. Adriana, yeah, perfect. John Nash, he was like a genius, really, but he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he was so intelligent and so honest that there is this scene in the movie when he's having lunch with this, I don't know, like this teenage girl, and he usually, when he goes to lunch, he always have lunch with her. But there is like this day when they are having lunch, and he says her, well, I'm sorry, I'm very sorry, but you know what? I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And she asks, but why? And he says, well, because you're a teenager and you have been a teenager for 10 years. So I have realized that you're not real. This was a real game change. He was becoming aware of the whole game board, and he was able to work and to operate in this situation. And going further with this license, poetic license, mathematicians study the structure of reality, how it works. And this is the first premise of game theory. Think about it in these terms. Every continuous function from a closed disk to itself has at least one fixed point. Here we see an orange circle. No, it is an orange disk, a closed disk, and we are the blue point. So we are a blue point in an orange disk. And of course, everything we do inside this orange disk has this fixed point, and everything we do in this closed disk comes back to us. This is like the old wisdom. Everything you give to the universe gets back to you. In this closed disk, in the orange disk, we as the blue point, we are just the subject, the subjectivity. From there, we observe the closed disk around us. But what if, as the blue point, we are in fact part of a bigger circle? If we were orange, we wouldn't notice, we wouldn't realize, we wouldn't be able to become aware of the orange circle, because we would be just that. So what makes us to realize that the universe around us is something that we can observe, that we are the subject, the blue point. So this is connecting us to maybe another circle, the blue circle. When we become aware of the orange disk and we become aware of us being part of other, let's call it consciousness, let's call it awareness, whatever you want to call it, then we can observe and intervene on the orange disk. Let's do like a 3-minute stop by like a simple meditation. So now you can close your eyes if you feel comfortable, and we'll do this exercise. We will just begin by noticing the sounds around us. Listen to every sound around you without judging, without naming. Just let the sounds appear. Maybe soft, maybe sharp, maybe distant. Each one of us hears something different. Of course, because we are in different places, in different cities, surrounded by different lives. Now take a breath and let your awareness expand. Expand from the room you're in to the building, from the building to streets, to the city, to the people around you. each of you with your own soundscape. And now gently ask yourself, who is listening? It's not the ears, it's not the mind, but the silent presence behind it all. So we move our attention from what is being heard to what is hearing. Thank you. Did it help you to just to free your mind? Yes, great. Because we are so much helped gain presence, exactly. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. We are so much inside the closed orange disk, and it's hard to get out of it, isn't it? And then realize that we are not the orange disk. We are not what is being hearing. We are what is listening. We are an observing consciousness. When we became capable of observing our reality, we became capable of tracing a map of it. And this is what these humans did when they were painting the animals in the caverns. They were not, as the other animals, just doing the things, but they were observing the things and they had the need to paint them, to reflect them, to create a map of them. This is the implied processing that is contained in that. From our identity, from the consciousness of who we are, from the consciousness of our identity, we create drawings, we design things. This concept of our identity and this concept that we create about other identities, about animals, about the act of hunting, this something that is coming from somewhere also. Our consciousness of identity is coming maybe from a higher consciousness, not higher in the sense, in a hierarchic sense, higher in the sense that it is like the blue circle, bigger. And this is how our identity works, in fact. Think about it. When a child is born, he identifies first with the mother because it's part of the body of the mother. And so it takes a while until we recognize that we are something different from the mother. And then we create the identity of ourselves and not the mother. But then we create the identity of the family. This is like an expanded identity, an expanded consciousness. And then of the tribe, of the football team, of the religion, of the nation, of the humanity, of the world, of the universe, of the cosmos. I believe that identity is in fact neuroplastic. Going back to what it means to us, it is the way our mind works, and it is our operative system. And as Einstein said, the problems created by one mind can never be solved from the same mind. And this is what we see every day with the devices that we have created. Maybe we are reproducing in what we are doing the process that is inside us. Maybe this invention of the operative systems means something. Maybe this thing that we have to reset the devices and we have to update them, it means something also. Well, this is a very strange image. It is a dream that I had when I was a kid, but I still remember because I can still feel what I felt when I was dreaming that. In this dream, there were these two bad guys that were going after me, and I was running, and I was going down the stairs, and there was a certain point where I couldn't escape. I had them in front of me with the guns pointing to me. And in that desperate moment, I said, you know what? That you are a product of my dreams, and I can do with you whatever I want. And this was so satisfactory. Of course, the nightmare ended immediately. And when I reflect about game changing, I realize that this is also a good example of game change. To realize that this was the game board that we were playing to. But it doesn't have to be our game board. It is our dream, but it doesn't have to be as we are dreaming it. But it only happens when we become aware of the dream, that we become aware that we are part of the dream and we are the protagonist in the dream. But at the same time, we are the dreamer. And I think this is what these examples that we saw of Gandhi, of Nelson Mandela, I think that this is what they realized. They were dreaming that nightmare in their lives, but they were the dreamers. And this is what made them capable of changing the dream and helping the whole humanity. And this is why I think creativity is very connected, very related to purpose and to compassion. Awareness makes us free and dissolves what we suffer as problems before in that sense. By understanding creativity, we can learn how to become aware of the situations in which we are involved and our role in them so that we get the power over it and it brings awareness to others. We become aware of the ecosystem and we are part of the ecosystem. And in this ecosystem, we are aware of ourselves and we are aware of the others and we are aware that we are all part of the same thing, whatever it is. In this sense, compassion, I like to think about compassion as a sort of gravity source that arises from the heart, because it is reminding us that we are part of the same body, of a bigger body. It is the supreme expression of wisdom, according to Buddhists, and I can understand why, because it is maybe the purest form of love. Compassion implies love and wisdom. Wisdom to know that the other is, there is no difference between the other and I. In that sense, I listened to this Buddhist master, and it was a wonderful example that he said, look at your two hands. Do you think that the right hand would load every time the left one is harmed? Why do you load when you see another person like falling, for example? Now we arrive to a third part of this session, which is why is it needed? We're talking about the purpose. Going back to the biological and organic metaphors, let's think about a caterpillar is transformed into a butterfly. This is a very interesting phenomenon. The caterpillar, it's going through this incubation process, and the caterpillar, inside the caterpillar, there is a very small percentage of the cells that are called imaginal cells. And the imaginal cells, they are a minority. They are very few. But they are the cells that are containing the transforming information. And these cells start to cluster. And little by little, other cells start to cluster with them. This is a very slow process. And finally, the caterpillar becomes a butterfly. This is something very interesting. I'm going to change the field. We're talking now about marketing. In marketing, there is like the Everett Rogers adoption curve that explains how an innovative technology or product is accepted in the market. It talks about how there is first a 2.5% of people that is adopting this technology or this product, and they are named innovators. Think about the first Mac, for example. It was something that only a few people would be interested in buying. We all had like the IBMs and the computers, but the Mac was a very niche product. This is what in marketing we call niche. And then little by little, a 13.5 of early adopters, and this is the people that they want to try the new, and this is practically what moves the fashion system and the fashion market. You want to have the latest, and then it comes the early majority, which is a 34%. Between the early adopters and the early majority, it is what in marketing terms is named as crossing the chasm, because there is a big chasm. So if the product doesn't cross that, it won't be successful. If it crosses that, then all the rest comes naturally. Once the 30% early majority is adopting this product or technology, then there is a majority and finally the laggards. So what it is very interesting is that it is very similar to the process of the imaginal cells in the butterfly. It is always a very small percentage of them. And this is why when we become aware of something, first it is very few, and then it begins to spread. Think about Gandhi, no? It works in a very similar way. And this concept of purpose has been studied by, for example, Teresa Amabile, and She names it intrinsic motivation. It refers to the internal drive that leads a person to engage in an activity for sheer enjoyment or personal interest. Teresa Mabili explains how it is crucial for creativity. It is people who are driven by curiosity and love for the task that are more likely to generate creative ideas than those motivated by external rewards like money or recognitions. This is what we saw about money. Money is the expression and the result of something. But if you pursue just first the money, you won't be as creative as you could be if you would be pursuing other things, that other values that we as humans are more connected to. In that sense, and Oliver, this your question. Through creativity, we connect with consciousness, and that's why purpose matters, because it's intention. This is studied in quantum physics. The intention is a wave function that determines the outcome, and consciousness operates in a quantum way. Creativity used to make money often generates a disconnected reality, deception and falseness. But creativity used to help and improve our world, where a shared reality creates miracles. And this is where compassion becomes also a key element of that. And imagine why compassion is important. Did you know that the single energy of a human body is equivalent to about 1,100 Hiroshima bombs? It gives us a powerful image of how much potential energy exists within each of us, but it has to be awakened. It has to be awakened. And then imagine when this atomic bomb that each of us have inside becomes together with the atomic bombs of the others. And we create not only the sum of all the atomic bombs that we represent, but a much bigger energy frequency. I wanted to share with you this interview from last week from Adam Patapoutian. Adam Patapoutian, he is a Nobel Prize in medicine, and he works with piezo proteins, which is something that has been discovered recently in this century. And he has discovered a new sense. We have always learned that we have 5 senses, and he explains how no, we have more than 5 senses. And one of these senses is one sense, this is why he won the Nobel Prize, which is the proprioception. The proprioception allows us to detect mechanical stimuli that are involved in many vital functions, like breathing, pain perception, blood pressure regulation. It has a lot of implications, and it is, I will just resume in a very simple way, it is what makes you be aware, but not aware consciously, but when we move, of the space we are occupying, or of our extremities, of how are we capable of doing yoga, because this is not the sense of the tact. And they have discovered how the piezo proteins have a main role in that. But what is interesting is that he gave 5 keys for creativity. And I will just resume them. First, he said, you don't have to be busy all the time. He said, if you're constantly busy, you're not being creative. And he says, I leave time for myself. For example, I have no meetings on Tuesdays, and I use that time to be in the lab thinking and reading. The second one, he says, change your field of work. His life is amazing. We don't have time to talk very much about him, but he arrived to LA as an immigrant from Lebanon, and he worked as a pizza deliverer, and it is an incredible story. He says, I compare this to being an immigrant. When you arrive in a new country, you notice people do things differently. So you adopt the practices that make sense to you and keep the ones from your culture that still work. You miss them. He has realized how switching fields in science is the same. So change your field of work, no? You don't have to be restricted. You have to create things from zero. And then the third, he said, is surround yourself with critics. Any advice? Because it's fun. I wanted to leave like this 5 or 7 minutes to last round of Q&As because I have liked very much how you're interacting in the chat, and I would like to know a little bit more about you if you want to share questions or reflections with us.
If I can ask a question, I just feel that we're moving into an area where we need to incorporate AI. And how does that, the students are using AI more and more. How do you feel that that's going to impact on their ability to be creative, to use their own imagination? Because they look up things and they believe everything that they read 100%. I feel that they're not even using any critical thinking. But I'd just like to know what's your perception?
I have to say, Madeleine, thank you for asking that. It is a very relevant question. And I have to say that I'm very optimistic, and I believe that everything that is arriving is because has a meaning. In our society, our culture, it is the left hemisphere that has been predominant. And this is why we are very focused on intellectuality, on ideas, on ideologies. And we have seen how the creative process works practically with the right hemisphere. And it leaves us the space for intuition and for creativity. I believe that thanks to our analytical capacity, we have been able to emulate the way our left hemisphere works analytically, and it can be more perfect than ours. And I am not very worried about that in that sense, if you understand what I mean. Because if we know how to use it, it could be a bigger step farther for humanity. This is why I think creativity is crucial nowadays, because we need less and less the analytical intelligence, but we need more and more I call it the herd intelligence. Before we became aware as humans of the orange circle, when we were only animals, we were moved by instinct, which is how animals work. Then we developed the intellectual capacity. And after all this process, we are able now to be moved not by instinct, but by intuition, which is a different type of being connected to the unconscious in the sense of being connected to nature. Not by instinct, by intuition. This is the field where I am really interested in delving in very deeply, because I think this is a crucial model in that sense. And this is why creativity is crucial nowadays.
Thank you very much. I agree wholeheartedly. I think creativity, I teach soft skills. One of the things I always build in being creative, whether it's doing presentations, whether it's doing negotiations, you need to think outside the box. I really feel it's something that everybody needs to practice even more. And I'm also a yoga teacher and I do mindfulness. I'm really interested in the fact that you're moving towards heart-centered things, because I believe in finding that as a moving forward.
So we have to meet.
We're on the same wavelength. Thank you.
You're very welcome. We had like Shashi Baxis ask how to recharge creative batteries in a quickly depleting creativity and short attention span world that this is also very interesting, because another aspect of the reality we are living now, it is that maybe capitalism has shifted from the economy of production to the economy of attention, because what is giving value to the economy, it is the data, the human data. In that sense, the way to get more human data as possible, it is by taking our attention. In Spanish, we say prestar atención. Prestar is to lend attention. In fact, what is happening is that we are giving our attention, but we are not getting it back. This is what is implied in what is happening every day when we are always looking at the devices. Because every time we look at the device, they are getting data from us. And they are asking more and more questions. Do you want to update that? Do you want to upgrade? Do you want to do you? We are doing like that. This is why it is very important what Ardem was saying. You have to find free time, and I think it is one of the main things that we have to do, to find spare time, free time, where our attention is not focused in a specific thing. And this is something that we all have to learn how to deal with that. And I have to say that I don't know how old are you, Sadvik? But if you are young, you have it easier, because we are very used to the old way of doing the things. How can we prioritize creative innovative thinking in our workplaces? You're saying it. because it's true that when you are under a lot of pressure, you cannot be creative. I think it is so important to create like this culture of creativity and to create awareness of how important creativity is. The interesting thing is that we're living now in the shift of paradigm moment. There are a lot of situations where, well, we find it hard. Observe this situation, and when you're feeling stressed because you're feeling this pressure over you, just try to go out of this orange circle where this is happening and become aware that you are observing it. As you observe your dream, as you observe that, well, this is the reality. We are here. We have to live in this reality, but it is not what you are.
I think also, sadly, if we work in a fast-paced environment, it will take a long time before everyone adapts to a creative movement or whatever. The work has to come from within. We need to have the tools for ourselves to have the time to be mindful, to stop, to breathe, to meditate, to have that 30 minutes to be creative or to not do anything, because a lot of the creativity happens when you're not doing anything, when you're just being. So I think that rather to put that peso on the institution or the company, that would be amazing if they allowed that to happen. But like, I think that it has to start from us, from within us, for us to have that responsibility with us.
Absolutely, Adriana. I think it was perfectly answered. And also, if you're observing that and you're becoming aware of that, maybe you are the person that can start to change that. Use it like your creative practice. Become aware of that. You have already become aware of that. It's worrying you. Try to leave all the weight of the worriness far from you. And just when you find the time to reflect, just think about it and what can you do to change that, to make it a little bit better. And maybe something will occur to you.
Thank you so much. I think we are on time. We went a little few minutes more, but I think this was very interesting and insightful. And thank you so much, Baruch, and everyone for connecting and for being here with us and for engaging and being so open to ask, to comment, and to everything.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It has been a great joy for me also sharing this time with you.